Hello everyone, this is Sam. In today's video we're gonna be talking about something that you guys have requested on that one video we did a while back about the state of the channel. That is to say, Druid guides. So we're gonna be starting it off with the most common of them, the Druid healing guide. And with this specifically, I'm first gonna make an introduction on the builds that I use versus what is commonly accepted as the meta. What is commonly accepted as the meta in Guild Wars 2 are builds that do exactly what is required in the areas that are not related to damage, and then that maximize as much as possible within the areas related to DPS. For instance, when it comes to the Healing Druid guides on the Snowcrow's website, you're gonna see a build that mostly makes uses of Harrier gear. The reasoning behind that is that with proper positioning and proper handling of mechanics, you will not put yourself in a situation where you would take enough damage to go down as a druid. Since you want to avoid going down at all costs so that you can keep providing what you need to provide to the group, that build does work in a good environment. Now, in this specific case, I'm gonna be talking about what Druid needs to provide to a group as well. Earlier, I mentioned that providing this stuff is what the Druid has to do, and that the meta build is there to make sure that you do provide these and then put everything else into DPS. What we're going to see here is a build that provides the same, but then builds more into the healing part and the survivability part to make sure that it is a build appropriate for any pugging situation. What Druid has to bring in an encounter are the team buffs as well as boons. We're first going to be going over the team buffs, which are the spirits, be it the offensive ones, or you could be taking spirit to give vulnerability, the storm spirit. Of course, you also bring buffs in the Glyph of Empowerment, because this is a good damage increase on a power subgroup. Now, what the Druid also bring is the trait Spotter. This will be giving your team an extra 100 precision that is often taken into account when building DPS classes. As such, you will want to make sure that you have it when you are put in a power subgroup. Now, when it comes to the other stuff that Druid brings to the party, they are the boons. The most common one of them is Might, that you apply through the Grace of the Lamb trait, which means that every ability that you have into your Celestial avatar is going to be giving Might on every pulse. Of course, this is not the only source of Might that exists in the build. You also apply Might with the Frost Spirit via the Nature's Vengeance trait, and you also have the Warhorn 5 skill that, on top of giving Might and Fury as well as Swiftness, also brings regen via the Windborn Nodes trait. Now that we have covered what the Druid is bringing to the party, it is gonna be time to look at this particular setup. As I said earlier, my main point when making this build that I have been using for now more than just a few months is to have survivability on top of everything that has already been brought to the team. Now, when I say that this build brings survivability, it means that it is appropriate for every single encounter out there. Of course, there are some other builds that you could be using to min-max in encounters where the damage pressure is lower, but this build is suited to everything. Now we're going to be having a look at the traits and then at the rest of the build so that you can have an overlook of how exactly it is meant to work. First of all, we're going to be using the Nature Magic, Skirmishing and Druid trait lines, which are the staple of the Healing Druid. The Instinctive Reaction trait adds extra healing power to your already pretty big healing power stat, and then, as we said earlier, the Windborn Notes is here for the regeneration, and the Nature's Vengeance is here to bring buffs from your spirits. Now, in Skirmishing, you can be taking the Sharpened Edge for some extra damage on your own character. And then obviously Spotter is going to be a good pick to bring buffs to the team, as we have shown earlier. And finally, I tend to go for Quick Draw because I want to get the maximum efficiency out of my Call of the Wild. Of course, going for Vicious Quarry would be a DPS increase. Now in the Druid trait lines, we're going to be taking Cultivated Synergy so that you heal allies around you and your pet on healing skills. This, of course, is very interesting when paired with the Glyph of Rejuvenation because it makes it a very strong heal. You could otherwise be taking the Water Spirit when you want to give healing to a specific person, for example a kiter at Kadim, or when the damage pressure doesn't justify taking a glyph that would replenish the health of your allies by a huge amount at once, but instead having the possibility to maintain Scholar on everyone with limited effort. The second trait we go for is the Verdant Etching, which means that you get a lesser Seed of Life on your glyph usage, as well as reducing the recharge time on your glyphs. This is going to be particularly interesting when we're going to have a look at the foods that we will want to use. Finally, as we said earlier, Grace of the Land is going to be the last trait that we take, because it is important to give might to the team. As you can see right here, my might lasts exactly 16 seconds, which is a choice that I have made and that I am going to be explaining further as we look at the gear right now. As I said with the gear, my main point was to make sure that I had all the important parts of Druid covered, so that is the buffs and the healing, and then building into survivability. The gear of choice that I made for that was mostly Magi, because I didn't want to get any toughness so as not to disrupt the tanking of the teammates in POG groups. It is gonna be full Magi except for the back piece, which is higher. The reasoning behind that is that I needed the extra 40 concentration to reach the 33.33% plus mark. That was important in order to get the 16-second duration on the might coming from avatar skills. Now that we have had a look at the stats for the gear, it is important to have a look at the rune set. The recent patch has changed rune and sigils, however, the rune of the monk remains the best one that you can be using for a healer and buffer class, which is exactly what Druid is. This gives you some boon duration as well as healing effectiveness. Healing effectiveness is something that is very important because the Druid skills scale both of your healing power and by using the healing effectiveness to give a maximum amount of healing in the minimum amount of time. When it comes to the weapon, we're going to have water and transference of both sets in order to make sure that we pump out extra healing as well as increasing our already pretty strong heals. This does mean that you will find yourself in situations where you're going to be outputting more healing than what is needed. However, you will want to have that in some POG groups where people are going to be desperately trying to kill themselves on specific encounters. I would take, for an example, Gorseval, the Multifarious. At Gorseval, during the retaliation phase, you're going to see quite a bit of POGs still trying to use all of their skills even though the retaliation is up. At that moment, having that extra healing power and healing effectiveness is going to make the difference between having them down and having them hang on to their lives. And you will want the latter because when it comes to resting, you do not do it yourself. Resting is something that the Druid should not do because you need to maintain the scholars on the other players as well as making sure that they wouldn't down. For that reason, you do not press F on the downed people, you let the others do so. If they blame you for that situation, just mention the fact that you are healing the rest of the team and that they could also press F themselves. Now I think that it is an appropriate time to talk about why I wanted that 33.66% boon duration, which translated into our 16-second might duration on Grace of the Land. When you use your Glyph of Rejuvenation with Alacrity, you're gonna have a 16-second cooldown, or actually a little bit less. This means that you are going to be in a situation where you can use your Glyph of Rejuvenation to either replenish your avatar and then use the skills to pump out might, or you can use it after having used your avatar just to make sure that you top off players that take damage as you already have depleted all of your Astral Force. This means that we do want to have 16 seconds as our minimum for the duration of the might. Now when it comes to the utility skills, we had already mentioned the usage of both of the damage spirits and then the Glyph of Empowerment when you are into a power subgroup. If you are struggling with the application of vulnerability, you would swap for a Storm Spirit. If your team tends to down in places that are not adequate, for example at Doom near the puddles, having the Search and Rescue skill can be a life savior. Of course, you would run as a baseline the Spirit of Nature, but there are some encounters where you would want to have Entangle. For example, Veil Guardian with a Seeker control, or Gorseval the Multifarious for the Spirit control. Now, this is based on every encounter, and you would do better to follow some specific guides on these in order to make sure that you have the right utilities. With everything that has been said so far, you do have proper coverage of what to take in which situations. Finally, we're going to be mentioning the food and utility consumables. you can use the delicious rice balls or the balls of tapioca pudding as your main food. The rice balls have the usefulness that they give you 100 healing power in all cases, as well as the 10% outgoing healing, whereas the bowl of tapioca pudding gives you 200 but after using a healing skill. For example, as we said earlier, with a 16-second cooldown of your Griffloot Rejuvenation and the 16 seconds on the Might, it would be quite useful for you to use the Glyph of Rejuvenation as a way to finish replenishing your Astral Force and then going into Avatar to top off the entirety of your squad, as well as give enough Might through Grace of the Land. When it comes to your utility consumable, you will want to run the Bountiful Maintenance Oils. The reasoning behind this, once again, is that you want to have that extra outgoing healing percent, and this one scales off your healing power and your concentrations, which are two stats that are existing within this build. Finally, we are going to be moving on to some general Druid tips, some rotation advice, and then some pet choices. When it comes to the general Druid tips, I have already mentioned them quite often throughout the video. You do not want to camp your staff, because even though the Ancestral Grace is a very strong healing, especially coupled as a blast finisher into your Sublime Conversion, you do not want to use that all the time. Instead, you will want to spend most of your time on your Axe Warhorn set. The Call of the Wild should be quick drawn, and as much as possible, you should try to aim your Winter's Bite into an enemy and not an ad. Same goes for Hunter's Call and your Split Blade, which are very strong damage skills. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can use your Ancestral Grace into Sublime Conversion. If you have Quick Draw available as you swap back to your staff, the best way to do it is Ancestral Grace, Sublime Conversion, and another Ancestral Grace. If you do use all your skills and keep the Sublime Conversion available, you can use it and blast it with your Call of the Wild in order to get another blast into a water field. While these are not as strong as your other healing skills, they are quite good and can also help replenishing your Astral Force if you are in a situation where you would need it. As much as possible, try to cast your glyphs on top of the team instead of casting them somewhere else and hoping for them to walk into it. Your goal is to be there to provide buffs as well as healing, and as such your position has to be always based on what your team is doing and not on what yourself are thinking should be the good idea. Now, when it comes to the extras that I could give on this, I will just mention the pets that you could be using based on some encounters. The most general set of pets that you're going to be using are the pets from Path of Fire, the Fanged Iboga and the Gazelle. The reasoning behind this too is that the Fanged Iboga has the best single target DPS as well as some CC on its F2. The Gazelle has some pretty strong damage and has access to CC both on its F2 and on one of its pet skills. Now, this is the two pets that I would recommend in every general situation. If you find yourself having trouble dealing with ads, the Jacaranda can be a good pick, and if you need extra CC, you could also be taking the Electric Wyvern. Now, this is once again encounter specific or based on the issues of your team, and it is something that you can think about as you see during the encounters that you are struggling with something specific. The wide array of pets that you have at your disposal means that you are rather versatile in what you can bring to the team. Now, this marks the end of this video. I hope that you guys have found something interesting in it and that you have learned something that can be useful to you in your general gameplay. If you have any further questions, you're more than welcome to ask them in the comment section. If you do wish to reach out to me on social media, my Twitter, Discord, and other social links are available in the description. If you wish to watch some live gameplay of this build, I stream raids on every Monday in the evening. Now, if you want to support the channel, you can like the video, leave a comment under it, share it to the people around you in order to boost the reach of this video, or you could decide to support me on Patreon. Patrons are the people who help me in maintaining this channel with their support, and every single upgrade that has been done on the channel has been through the fruits of their hard work. If you wish to join them, the link is in the description. Now, I wish every single one of you some happy raiding and to have fun on Druid.